Hello, welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, it is a wild time for the Jets. Davante Adams is a New York Jet. Mike Williams is on the trade block. Haason Reddick, I don't know what's going on with that. We're going to talk about all of it. But how are you feeling? It's been only a couple of days since we've talked, but it feels like so much has changed.
Well, been a busy time. Busy setup change for me because my freaking neighbors were blaring loud music at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday.
It was good music.
It was so loud it would have affected the quality of the recording. So I have moved shop over to my living room. So forgive the weird angle change, but we are here because we got a lot to talk about. This is a packed show, as packed a show as we've had on a Wednesday in quite some time, irrespective of the 2-4 record. We got Davante Adams stuff to talk about. We got Mike Williams stuff to talk about. We got Haason Reddick stuff to talk about. We got Pittsburgh Steelers stuff to talk about because the Jets play a freaking game this week against Pittsburgh Steelers. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Jet Press Podcast. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. You can download us there and on YouTube. We really are getting close to 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to just like the stream over there, that'd be a big help. If you want to subscribe, that'd be a big help. They all help promote the show. But never mind all that, Justin, because we are giving you every inch of Jets content right here. We don't have time for idle chit-chatting and dilly-dallying. So let's start off with Davante Adams, a move that we thought was going to happen for quite some time because just all the signs were there. The Jets wanted another receiver, Aaron Rodgers' buddy. The Raiders weren't going to keep him. It finally happens. Davante Adams is gone from the Raiders. He is now a New York Jet, and I'm just as conflicted about it as ever. Let's start with the pros. If we want to pros and cons this thing up, let's start with the pros first. Davante Adams is the best receiver the Jets have had in decades.
Yeah.
In terms of talent. Like maybe ever in terms of just how good he is.
That's a take.
I mean, think about it. Am I wrong?
Some Don Maynard disrespect?
Don Maynard 60s versus Davante Adams, who I think has better stats than Don Maynard.
We're seeing relative to their era.
Even with that.
I mean, talent. Keyshawn Johnson was very talented.
Adams that's the level of impact acquisition they made. They now have, maybe you could argue, the best 1-2 punch receiver in the league with Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson. Aaron Rodgers, for all the problems that have happened over the last couple of weeks, still has the ability to throw the ball like Aaron Rodgers. Now he's got that Davante Adams connection, which I imagine he's going to get 15 targets right off the bat because it's Aaron Rodgers and because it's Davante Adams. I know he's an older receiver, and I know he wasn't particularly fast. That was my concern. But if you look at his numbers with the Raiders, with far inferior quarterback play, I still think he was a really high-end receiver. I think he's top 10. And even if you gave him a guy like Derek Carr, who I don't think is a world beater, but I think he's probably, over the course of his career, an average to above-average quarterback, he was still first-team All-Pro. So now you take that and you put it over to Aaron Rodgers. It's gangbusters. Like, get the Super Bowl stuff made.
Yeah.
My only concerns that I have are, I feel like people, even the people that like this trade, are admitting it feels very panicky. It feels very, they had to do this move, which I would disagree on that statement, but you've heard that a lot. The thing I'm really wrestling with this whole Adams trade thing is this doesn't solve any of their big issues. Like, watching the Jets through 6 weeks, did anybody say wide receiver is a huge issue? I mean, we've had problems with Mike Williams not being what we thought he would be, and Xavier Gibson basically disappearing, and Malachi Corley having one target and basically being a complete waste of a draft pick. Those are issues. But in terms of how they're impacting the game, I mean, Garrett Wilson struggled early, but he's still been pretty good this year. Maybe not what people thought he would be, but he's still pretty good. And freaking Allen Lazard, if he kept this pace up through an entire 17-game season, did he end with 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns?
Yeah, he leads the league in touchdowns.
He leads the league in balling. This doesn't fix that. This doesn't even fix some of their biggest offensive concerns, which I think right now are the two tackles, Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith, both of whom are showing their age. Obviously, the move there would be to put Olufashinu in. I don't think they do that. But Davante Adams doesn't help that. The two big issues in a macro scale with the Jets are can't stop the run, can't rush the passer outside of Will McDonald. And this doesn't help fix that either. Haason Reddick, we'll talk about him later. In terms of just purely how this helps the Jets, I think Reddick may have helped more because he at least fixes an issue of need or helps to somewhat improve an issue of need. Adams does not. So I'm still very conflicted on this. The Jets are a better team. I don't think anybody's arguing that. And I think that in terms of the future with Adams and with Rodgers and all this, I think we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I'm still skeptical it's going to have the impact everybody thinks it'll have or wants it to have.
Yeah, I think your concerns are valid. I think it's totally fair to say that Haason Reddick might be a bigger addition than Davante Adams at this stage, just for overall impact in terms of the position they play, the needs that the Jets have. But the Jets, like you said, are a better football team now than they were yesterday, than they were 2 days ago. They are a better team now that they have Davante Adams. If you look at that Bills game, they win that game if Davante Adams is playing. And I hate narrowing it down to that. I hate simplifying it to that. But if Davante Adams is in the lineup instead of Mike Williams, I am confident in saying that they win that game. Probably should have won it anyway. They shot themselves in the foot way too much. But they win that game if Davante Adams is playing. They might beat Minnesota if Davante Adams is playing. They might beat Denver if Davante Adams is playing. I think this has been – the Jets are better than their 2-4 record in some respects. They're more talented than their 2-4 record. But as Papa Giorgio here says, why do we always lose? I
wish I knew. I
wish I knew. They find ways to lose, and that's what the Jets have been doing. But they're a better football team now that Davante Adams is on the roster. They are one step closer to hopefully achieving their goal of not only reaching the playoffs, the postseason for the first time in 14 years, but making a potential run out of Super Bowl, because that's the entire point. When they traded for Aaron Rodgers, that was the goal. When they got Aaron Rodgers, it was like, okay, we could go and get Derek Carr. They had other options. They wanted Aaron Rodgers because they wanted a chance to win the Super Bowl, and we talked about this in the last show. It's a failure if they don't. It's an unmitigated failure if they don't even reach the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers. If they fail to win a Super Bowl or fail to even come close, then it's absolutely a failure. This helps them accomplish that goal. I don't know if they will, and I don't think anybody is here sitting and saying that this fixes everything. Even I think the most delusional and optimistic of Jets fans are not saying that. They don't think that this fixes everything. The defensive line is still an issue. The run defense is an issue. The pass rush is an issue. Their tight ends are an issue outside of Tyler Conklin. Their tackles, like you said, and just specifically the offensive line in a general sense is regressed over the last few weeks. There's definitely issues with this Jets team that go beyond Davante Adams, but they're a better football team with Adams, because while wide receiver wasn't one of the biggest needs, we've seen the issues with that position group pop up more so in relation to Aaron Rodgers, where Rodgers really, even still now, I wouldn't say Rodgers is fully on the same page with Garrett Wilson. He's certainly fully not on the same page with Mike Williams, and that's potentially cost them 2 games now. So you replace Mike Williams in that lineup with Davante Adams. Not only are you getting a receiver who, while I do think he's lost the step, is still top 15 at his position in the league, and you could argue borderline top 10. I think I'd agree with that statement. You're getting a great player who has already pre-established chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. You're getting Allen Lazard, who's a really good wide receiver and doesn't have the drop issues. That's what you're ideally getting. So I think the ceiling of the offense is significantly higher, especially I feel a lot more optimistic about it, especially given the changes that we just saw this past week, which, we have such a stacked show. We're not going to have time to talk about everything, but the Jets use pre-snap motion on 73% of their plays on Monday night. They averaged 7.7 yards per attempt on those plays. They were a really, really effective and efficient team with the changes that they made on offense. I know they put up 20 points. Should have been 30. It should have been 30 plus. They missed 2 chip shot field goals and had a touchdown called back. This was not a 20-point performance from the offense. So you're now adding Davante Adams to that offense. I think the ceiling is very, very, very high. And that gives me optimism for this Jets team moving forward. For as much as I want to say, and I will continue to say this until they prove me wrong, the Jets are a bad football team because they find ways to lose, but they are supremely talented. This Jets team should not be 2-4. They are 1 or 2 plays, and I don't want to say lucky plays. They're 1 or 2 their own boneheaded mistakes away from being 4-2 and possibly even better. This is a team that has the potential to make a run in the second half of the season, and trading for Davante Adams helps them potentially make that run.
This is still a 2-4 team whose best win this year. Their 2 wins this year were over Will Levis and Jacoby Brissett.
Of course,
those are the 2.
But you're telling me they shouldn't have beat the Bills on Monday night if they didn't get out of their own way? They absolutely should have won that game.
If the Jets won, the Bills fans can also say, hey, the Bills should have won that game if they didn't get out of their own way. I think everybody was just screwing up, and the Jets screwed up last.
I would say the Jets made more mistakes in that game than the Bills. The penalty, I'm not even talking about the penalties because there were so many penalties in that game that even more so against the Bills that were just horrific penalties that screwed them. But that's not their own mistakes. That's the refs making mistakes. The mistakes were the Tyler Bass field goal miss. He also missed an extra point. They left 4 points on the board. The bottom line is the Jets left 10 points on the board, 10 easy points that they had.
But looking at the Davante trade, one problem that I have is Jeff Ulbrich had some comments when they brought Downing in about how Aaron Rodgers is on board with this being a run-first offense. This is going to be a run-first offense with Breece Hall. Fine. Old quarterback, makes sense if he's all on board. Well, now it can't be a run-first offense because I think it would be almost football sacrilege to have these two receivers, Wilson and Adams, and then a third one, Lazard, who everybody agrees has been really good this year, drops aside. He's made more great plays in the last 3 weeks than he made the entire first year he was with the Jets.
He's been a net positive, even though he's had his mistakes.
And probably relative to expectations, the most positively surprising Jets player this year.
Sure. Yeah.
Now you got to play. Now both of them are getting less targets. Rodgers is going to have to throw 40 times a game to get the most out of everybody.
I don't know about that. I think you're creating an issue that doesn't exist. The Jets used a lot more or a lot less 12 personnel in this last game, and that was definitely the right decision because their tight ends outside of Tyler Conklin stink. Jeremy Ruckert, man, I have a personal connection to Jeremy Ruckert because he's from Long Island, literally played against the dude in high school. He is not a very good NFL tight end. He is a bad backup tight end. And whatever the hell you're throwing out there, whether it's Brendan Bates or Anthony Ferkser, it doesn't matter. The Jets tight ends stink. They are using their wide receivers. They're using running backs. And I don't think that necessarily means Rodgers has to throw the ball 40 times a game. I mean, they had similar personnel groupings to what they're going to do with Davante Adams. Breece Hall ran the ball 18 times in a game that was 50-50. I mean, they weren't, necessarily playing from behind. They weren't leading a lot. And Breece Hall was very effective. I still don't think Breece Hall is fully back despite that breakout game he had, but I don't see why you can't continue to feature Breece Hall a lot, continue to feature Braylon Allen also in the passing game. With these three wide receivers. I mean, just the talent you got, that's a good problem. If you got more playmakers than you can use, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, but look who's going to be in charge of spreading the targets around. Todd Downing and Nathaniel Hackett.
It worked this past week. Garrett Wilson Garrett Wilson 2 weeks ago had the most targets of any player in a game since 2015. I don't think Davante Adams coming in is gonna make Garrett Wilson an afterthought. And obviously we know Allen Lazard is still going to get his targets.
The other thing I'm worried about, and this is just with the Jets making moves on a macro scale. I mentioned this briefly in not to be Debbie Downer here. I'm just trying to give you all the angles of Davante.
You're devil's advocating it. I appreciate it.
Is they're 2-4 now. Obviously Davante's not going to be fully integrated into this offense in terms of knowledge, comfort, familiarity, scheme, all that. What, like 2 weeks, maybe 3 before he gets fully, totally locked in?
This offense, I think
by that time, they could easily lose this Sunday night at Pittsburgh. They're 2-5. New England, they should beat, but it's on the road, and Drake May looked okay. Divisional game, who knows? By the time that Davante Adams really starts to be Davante Adams, for lack of a better word, the season might be over. They could be out of it.
I think in this offense, I'm much less concerned about that. This is an offense that, even though Todd Downing has made some changes, it's still very, very, very similar to what Aaron Rodgers has run throughout his career. And we also know that Aaron Rodgers kind of makes up stuff on the fly too. And a lot of, it was less last week, but before last week, a lot of it has just been Rodgers making changes at the line of scrimmage. You don't think he's going to, I think he's going to do that a lot with Davante Adams. And now he's going to have a wide receiver who he trusts, who is on the same page with him. I'm not concerned about Adams. I could see Adams coming in and putting up 120, 120 yards on 8 catches on Sunday. Like he's Aaron Rodgers. I wasn't speaking specifically against the Steelers defense, although I don't think their pass defense is as good as a lot of people's. I think their run defense is better than their pass defense. But
and they got Watt.
Yes. And they obviously have TJ Watt. But yeah, I could see it. I wouldn't be stunned if it happened. And I don't think it's not going to happen because Davante has to learn the offense. I'm not concerned about that.
Not learn the offense in in a way that rookies learn the offense, but in a way where to get that timing back with Aaron Rodgers to the point where you're Davante Adams, that might take some time.
Maybe. I don't think it's going to immediately be exactly what it was in Green Bay, but that's not a concern to me. Like, that's not when I look at this. But bottom line, I look at it as the Jets gave up a 3rd-round pick because it's very likely not. If it's a 2nd-round pick, that means the Jets probably got to the AFC Championship game, which awesome, man. I don't think anyone's complaining about that. But it's likely going to be a 3rd-round pick for a receiver who is still probably a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL, who has pre-established chemistry with their quarterback in a year where you are trying to go all in. Like that is the bottom line here. Is the Jets are trying to win a Super Bowl this year. They're trying to win a Super Bowl potentially next year if the same regime is back. They have this 2-year window roughly with Aaron Rodgers, and they are trying their best to capitalize on it. I cannot fault them for that. I can't fault them for giving up a 3rd-round pick to do that because, I mean, not to be that guy, and I always hate this argument, but I mean, goddamn, look at the other 3rd-round picks that they've had in recent years, from Malachi Corley to Jabari Zuniga to whoever you want to throw out there.
Guy Polite, Ardarius Stewart.
I mean, yeah, it's not even under the Joe Douglas regime, but even the Douglas regime has not been good with drafting 3rd-round picks. So, and again, that's not used as a valid excuse, I would say, but I don't think whatever player you're drafting with that 3rd-round pick is going to be worth whatever you're getting from Davante Adams. Now, if the Jets don't win anything, yeah, the trade wasn't worth it in theory, but they're trying. They're trying to win right now. I cannot fault them for trying to win, and I think it makes them a better team, and it helps them achieve their goals. They're not perfect, but they are closer to reaching their goals than they were 2 days ago, and they did so at a minimal price. I'm on board with it.
I am on board with it. Now, I do want to see how what happens with his deal moving forward, because he's got 2 years left, no guarantees left, but officially 2 years left on his deal.
I think 3 including this year now.
Yeah, well, 2 after this year.
Yeah.
2 after this year. Aaron Rodgers is going to be 41 years old in a couple weeks in December. We don't know, honestly, if he's even going to play next year, if we're being perfectly honest. That's up in the air.
Yeah, we don't know for sure.
If Adams, I will say, though, if he makes a commitment to the Jets in the same way Rodgers did, where they end up reworking those last couple of years of the deal, so not paying him $35 million.
Oh, they will.
He's like, this is my last chance at getting a ring. I'm doing it with the Jets. Then I think Rodgers is back, because I think that would be attractive to him. Here's my crazy idea that I think could be like a nice fallback plan for the Jets is if Rodgers leaves and they still have Adams, I think maybe they go after like Derek Carr and say, hey, let's not try to totally rebuild, because Adams wanted to be with Derek Carr. We could at least try to get something there. It's not a total rebuild. I think it gives them more flexibility, and I think they are also less likely to just completely bottom out if things don't go well this year. So the Rodgers experiment, if you're in on that, we don't know how, we're varying degrees of how in on that we are, but if you're in on that, I feel like this just got a big lifeline, and there's probably a more likely chance Rodgers is going to be back next year and the year after that, even as he goes into his 40s. I don't know if that'll bring the Jets a championship or a deep playoff run, but if you want to take the argument that Aaron Rodgers is still a good quarterback and the market is not full of many options who are better, I think this gives you – I think this makes it more likely that he's going to be back next year, irrespective of what happens this year or who they hire.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And the Jets have to be in on the Aaron Rodgers experiment. They have to be. That's why they made this move, because they are in on the Aaron Rodgers experiment. If you're a fan and you're already out on Rodgers and you're just convinced the Jets aren't going to win a championship with Rodgers, then yeah, you probably hate this move, obviously, because you don't think they're winning and they're making a win now move. And if you don't think that's going to result in them winning anything, then yeah, you probably hate it. But from the Jets' perspective, they're trying to win. They're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. And yeah, as far as his future flexibility goes, it's basically a 1-year deal right now. They are playing out the rest of this year. He has $0 in guarantees beyond 2024. They're going to revisit his contract in the offseason. I imagine in many ways he's tied to Aaron Rodgers. If the Jets bottom out this year and they win 7 games and Rodgers retires, then yeah, I don't think Davante Adams is on the Jets next year. I'm pretty sure he would ask to be either traded or they would just simply cut him, because they can. There's no guaranteed money on his deal. He would want out, I imagine. But if the Jets win enough, maybe they make a playoff appearance, they make the playoffs, they win a playoff game. Yeah, I think the Jets run it back again with Aaron Rodgers next year. They rework Davante Adams' contract and they figure it out. Davante Adams is not going to play on his current contract next season. He's not going to be making $36 million. His cap it's not going to be $36 million. I can guarantee you that I will bet my life savings that Davante Adams' his cap hit next year is not $36 million, because they have that financial flexibility to lower it. And anytime a team has that financial flexibility, they're going to take it. He has no guaranteed money. They will rework his contract.
The bar that I have, obviously, I think the bar for success, in my opinion, with this whole Aaron Rodgers experiment, at the minimum, is get to an AFC Championship game. I think that's the minimum for this was a success. We can argue the degree of success, but that's what I want to see at the maximum. For this year, I'm almost putting a playoff mandate on. Even if they make the playoffs and go play one of the, because it looks like the AFC, the division winners are pretty much already locked up right now. I think Buffalo's winning the AFC East. I think the Texans are winning the South. I think the Ravens are going to win the North. I think the Chiefs are going to win the West.
It seems clear cut right now.
If they sneak in, and even if they get annihilated in the playoffs, if they at least end the playoff curse, I think that's enough to say, all right, we had some kind of unusually bad luck in the first early part of the season. It weighed us down. We rebounded. We got in. We broke the curse. Joe Douglas gets to say, I'm the guy who got the Jets to the playoffs for the first time in 14 years. I think that's enough to say, let's run it back again. If they completely fall out of the playoffs, then I think it's total reboot time. And if you want more Aaron Rodgers, I think that this is obviously the move you have to make. Nobody's arguing that Davante Adams isn't good anymore. He's still really good. He still makes the Jets a lot better. I think there are moves that would have helped them more, but it's Davante Adams. Exactly. Jets are better now than they were.
Exactly. And I think even though wide receiver, not like the most pressing need by any means, I think it's going to help them a lot more than some might realize, that maybe even you realize. I really do think it's going to be a huge boost for that offense, especially. I'm
the logic of just like build strength on strength, and just because teams do that in the draft a lot, where they have a strong position, they go, let's just draft another one. Let's just have this unit be so good it overwhelms everything else. And I guess that's a risk you could take.
Realistically, for as talented as their wide receiver room was, and I'm a Mike Williams fan. I like Mike Williams. I do think he's done some good stuff for the Jets when he's gotten those opportunities this year, but he's very clearly not on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. And the last few weeks, he's been pretty much a net negative for them, almost a zero. So while I think the wide receiver room was talented, you are now basically turning that zero, what you've been getting from Mike Williams the last couple of weeks, into your best wide receiver, your best skill player, and somebody who has a lot of history playing with Aaron Rodgers. I think that is a massive, massive jump in production level that you're going to get. So I do think it definitely goes a long way. Real quick, Garrett on Facebook said Adams restructured his contract this year. They'll both be here next year. There's no guaranteed money beyond 2024. He just restructured his deal when he was traded to the Jets, creating more cap space now, like 2024 cap. That's all they did. They lowered his 2024 cap bit, but I'm pretty sure they didn't touch his 2025 and 2026 numbers at all. And there's no guaranteed money, to my knowledge, beyond 2024. So that's not a guarantee that he's going to be here next year.
Let's move on to another Jets receiver who's in trade talks, Mike Williams, because right now he's the wide receiver 4 on this team. Because Allen Lazard, through his own merit, has overtaken Mike Williams as wide receiver previously 2 without Davante Adams, now wide receiver 3 with Davante Adams. Mike Williams, this was a prove-it deal. He had 7 years in LA, pretty good years, couple 1,000-yard seasons. But after his injury, now he's 30, just turned 30. This was his year to show, I'm back, I'm still Mike Williams. And he has 10 catches and no touchdowns through 6 games. And the Jets are 2-4. He gets one catch a game, occasionally 2. That's where we're at with Mike Williams. I'm willing to call this a huge failure. I mean, I liked him stylistically, but even beyond the fact he's not on the same page with Rodgers, and he just doesn't look like he has that same pizzazz he had with the Chargers. The problem I have with Mike Williams is he was good at 2 things in LA. Going vertical, led the league in yards per catch. I think 1 year he had 20 yards a catch. Mm-hmm. And red zone, big, huge guy. They don't use him at all for either of those things.
Yes.
The big problem with this offense schematically, with Downing or with Hackett or without him, is they're not vertical at all. I mean, their first explosive pass play of the year was a Hail Mary
to
Allen Lazard, and that's half luck. And then the other explosive was the Breece Hall play, which he should have scored, and then he didn't. And we all know what happened after that happened. So because of that, that's why I'm really puzzled by Mike Williams. Like, they got a guy who you had to use specifically. Nathaniel Hackett incompetence aside, they're not doing that at all. So I think it's just time for both guys to admit this didn't work. The Jets could probably recoup something for him. Obviously not, I think, anything above like a day 3 pick, but I'll take a day 3 pick for a wide receiver 4, especially when the Jets have now lost 2 straight games throwing to him on game-winning drives because he was supposed to be their vertical threat, and through imprecise route running or just not having his head in the game or whatever it is, it just hasn't worked out. I'm done with Mike Williams personally. If he never plays another snap again for the Jets, I'm more than fine with that.
And I think there's a real possibility that happens. I know the folks over at U Stadium reported there's a chance he could be a healthy scratch this week, since it sounds like the Jets are pretty committed to trading him. So they might just not want him to get hurt. I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the schematic thing, because
I'm glad I am too, because Justin just popped out for a little bit.
Dude, I hate my Wi-Fi.
It hasn't happened.
Hey, listen,
for the last couple of weeks. I don't know what's going on with Justin Fried's Wi-Fi here, but as we wait for him to get back, basically the problem with Mike Williams is, even though you're trying to like get a guy who's a very specific type of player, Jets are trying to fit a square peg in the round hole. It's just not working.
Dude, like and support the show so I can get better Wi-Fi, please. Thank you. Yeah, dude, I hate it so much. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the schematic thing, because when the Jets signed Mike Williams, he was the guy who was supposed to stretch the field. He was the guy that was supposed to go vertical in this offense and be that red zone threat. And the Jets literally just don't do that. Like, it doesn't matter that they've had Mike Williams, doesn't matter who else they have. They don't do that. They did it a little bit more this past week. They started working in those deep crossers, those comebacks, those intermediate routes. But through the first 5 weeks of the season, it was basically slants. It was hitches. It was little ins and outs. I mean, they were getting the ball out within a couple of seconds, and it was just all the simplest short route running. And that's not Mike Williams' game at all. So I'm not surprised at all that his production has been very limited with the Jets, because they're just not using him in the way that Mike Williams is best used. They're using Garrett Wilson in a way that he can be best used, although I would love to see him running more intermediate routes as well. And they were doing that again this past week a little bit more, having him run some comebacks, some corner routes, one of which on that flea flicker, by the way, Aaron Rodgers should have hit him. Wilson was wide open. Oh, now Mike just dropped out. What, dude, maybe it's not a Wi-Fi problem. We got to look into this. But as I was saying, Garrett Wilson was wide open on that corner route, and Rodgers just didn't let it rip. Mike, I don't know what's going on with this right now. We're both.
It's a restream problem. Just go on.
We got to figure it out. But yeah, I'm not surprised at all that Mike Williams' production has been very limited with the Jets, and it does seem like it's probably time, if they're not going to make those schematic changes in the offense, and now that they just got Davante Adams, it's going to be really hard to get everybody involved. It makes sense that they're going to trade him. I don't think he's a bad player, and I also don't think that a lot of his struggles in New York have been the result of him. That's partially not on the same page with Rodgers, partially just unfortunate. I mean, the dude fell and slipped. I know he didn't run the correct route, or he was not didn't run the precise route that Rodgers had wanted. But yeah, I'm not surprised that Mike Williams' production has been limited. He's going to be traded at some point, it seems. I don't know when, but it could be before this next game. If not, I would not be shocked to see him as a healthy scratch, and then Malachi Corley maybe is active for the first time in a few weeks.
This is just another example of post Rex. When's the last veteran free agent the Jets have signed that really panned out like this?
The post
Rex veteran 1-year deals.
Nothing comes 1-year deal.
Yeah, like 1 year, prove it, help us win this year, kind of thing.
Nothing.
I can't think of one.
I'm sure there's some. There's just nothing coming to mind right now. I mean, obviously, you can like Tyron Smith has kind of not worked out at this point.
But I'm just saying, it's another one to add to the pile of nothing like the Chargers. Tyron Smith looks nothing like he did with the Cowboys. Mike Williams looked nothing like he did with the Chargers. And that's what gets you so ticked off, because you're like, he did this in LA. Why can't he do it here?
They're not using him that way. They don't want him to be doing that. I think he's just a poor fit for this offense right now. The way
that's part of it too, but also there's two problems with that. Number one, even when they have thrown it to him, outside of a couple nice contested catches, I've been kind of underwhelmed when he has gotten targeted. He's a complete zero running, with the ball as a yak guy. So you can't use him like that.
He is also coming off the torn ACL. I think that has definitely played a part in this.
Sure, but also number 2, Mike Williams is a former top 10 pick as a receiver, and he's had success before that with a couple 1,000-yard years. You can't, he's just not getting open on routes. He just is not getting open. Even the 10 catches he's had this year, how many of them were a guy right on him and he jumps over him? Like probably 6 of them. And that leads me to believe that no matter how you're using him, I think there's going to be problems.
And I think that also is why he hasn't been getting targeted as much. Well, Mike Williams, first of all, has never been a guy who gets a ton of separation. That's never been his game, but he's made up for it by being one of the best contested catch receivers in the NFL for years now.
And now he's getting none.
Right. But the issue is that you have to earn the trust of your quarterback for a quarterback to throw it to you in a tight window, because the quarterback is putting the football at risk when he throws to a tight window, to a wide receiver who's tightly covered. He needs to trust that you're going to be able to catch that ball. And unfortunately, we see it. Aaron Rodgers does not trust Mike Williams. So even though Williams might be getting these contested catch opportunities, if the ball was coming his way, Rodgers just isn't throwing him the ball. And then unfortunately, the few times, like we had 2 times this past game where it was on a little slant hitch or whatever on 2nd and long, Williams wasn't ready for the ball. And of course, we saw him fall down on that last offensive play for the Jets. So when you just don't have the confidence of your quarterback and you're a contested catch wide receiver, it's going to be really difficult to contribute, especially if your team isn't even using you at what you do best.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
We're not like huge fans of Aaron. We're not like Aaron Rodgers stans.
Sure.
But people are going nuts. Like I get that he's a big popular guy, but they want him to lose and be bad so badly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I just put out a tweet about that. I was like
he rips Mike Williams in the post-game press conference. Which, I'm be honest,
I don't even think
Aaron Rodgers has done a lot. You know who else has done that? Every really good quarterback. Peyton Manning's ripped people. Tom Brady's ripped people. Drew Brees ripped people.
Ripped is the wrong.
Why can't Aaron do it? Especially because don't people get, especially Saleh too, don't they get a lot of crap for being too buddy and not holding people accountable? Isn't that holding somebody accountable? No, but you have to do it in a certain way. Well, how do we know Saleh wasn't holding people accountable behind closed doors?
He was.
It's like the narrative, it's always against him.
You'll never find me standing Aaron Rodgers. I think we've made that pretty clear. I disagree with a lot of stuff that he's said or done, and there's many valid criticisms of Aaron Rodgers, but I think it's become undeniable to me, covering him and watching him over the last couple of years, that he's held to a very different standard than other players. And part of that just comes with the territory of being not only one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, but a personality that is contentious. He's not one that's going to fade into the background.
I guess contentious is but it's not an explosive contentious where it's like, you mother, he's yelling at people.
No, but it's you either love him.
Wouldn't that be worse?
I'm saying it's a you either love him or hate him situation. He makes himself a target. As a result, I think he's covered differently. But that doesn't justify it in my mind. I think, first of all, there are a lot of things, the amount of things that he said that have been taken out of context, just talking on-field stuff, just talking football-related stuff that's been taken out of context and used against him is very ridiculous. The Mike Williams thing, if that's, Patrick Mahomes, nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares, because ripping him is the wrong word. What Aaron Rodgers did, first of all, and again, this is when I talk about the taken out of context, before he even talked about the Mike Williams thing, he took personal accountability, said he needs to play better. He needs to do better. I mean, what did he say when Robert Saleh got fired? He said that if I played better, Robert Saleh would still be here. He's taking ownership. He's taking accountability. That's what you want your quarterback to do. And then he was asked a specific X's and O's question. Hey, exactly what went wrong on that play? And I find it refreshing that Aaron Rodgers specifically described exactly what happened on that play. Helped me learn about what happened on that play, because from my perspective, I'm like, oh, maybe, Rodgers tried to throw it to that spot and it was underthrown and whatever. No, Williams was not in the spot he expected him to be. So Rodgers tried to adjust to that throw, and as a result, he threw it not exactly to where he wanted it to be. I'm glad that we found that out, and I'm glad that Rodgers said that. And I didn't take that as him ripping his teammate by any means. I took it as him explaining what happened while also taking personal accountability. That seems like a situation where if Patrick Mahomes says that, if Josh Allen says that, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But because it's Aaron Rodgers, now we have to do a week's worth of think pieces on ESPN about it. And I again, this is not me. I'm never going to be an Aaron Rodgers stan. I'm not. I just will call out hypocrisy when I see it. And I think with Aaron Rodgers, both from his own perspective and from people covering him, there happens to be a lot of hypocrisy.
We're a content creator. Like, we try to do things that are not only fun and entertaining for you, but fun and entertaining for us. I feel like, how is that fun? How is that entertaining to constantly talk about Aaron Rodgers' personality to your audience for over and over and over, and nothing's changed in years, so you're doing the same thing? Like, what is the point?
People eat it up. That's why, because it does ratings for them. If they wouldn't do it, if it didn't,
all right, then I point the finger at you then, fan. How is that the conversation you want about football?
The average casual viewer doesn't give a shit about X's and O's. They don't.
Not even the X's and O's, just talking about Aaron Rodgers' personality. Why is that why do people care so much about that?
Brian, you're right. If Allen said that about Stephon Diggs, yes, but that was because there was already rumors and hints of tension between them. If Josh Allen said that about Khalil Shakir, is anyone going to care? No one's going to care if he says it about Khalil Shakir. If Rodgers said it about like Davante Adams, yeah, that's obviously going to be a storyline because, they're supposed to have this chemistry. They're supposed to be buddy-buddy and stuff. Like, I think the player itself matters. And I don't think Mike Williams is notable enough. Like, now I get why it's becoming more of an issue or more of a talking point because the Jets immediately traded for Davante Adams, which as a result means that obviously they did that because they hate Mike Williams, which is not what happened, but that'll be the narrative. But even before that was still getting talked about. Now you have Ryan Fitzpatrick is talking about it. Like, there's a lot of people mentioning it, and I think it's very dumb. I think it's very dumb. By all accounts, the players in the locker room love Aaron Rodgers, and they think he's a great teammate and a great leader since he's gotten there. I think there's a lot of valid concerns or valid criticisms of Rodgers as a teammate before he got to the Jets. But at this stage of his career, he seems to have, I don't want to use the word matured. I don't know what you want to say about it, but he's been a good teammate with the Jets by all accounts. Doesn't excuse other stuff he's done or other stuff he said, but that's just my read on it.
Brian Sternbeck, there's rumors of Williams being on the outs with the Jets right now. I believe it. If I sucked at my job, I'd be outs with my place too.
Well, we're not doing that. Mike Williams doesn't suck. We're not going to say that. That's dumb.
Is 11 catches the bar for not sucking? Because he has 10 right now.
Are we going to ignore all the context that we just provided for why that's the case, Mike?
I am existing in the context of that which came before me, and I am saying that Mike Williams, a former 1,000-yard receiver, who the Jets signed to not, I don't think, be a 1,000-yard receiver, but to probably be close to that as a key part of this offense. They expected him to be better than Allen Lazard. They expected him to be the number 2 wide receiver.
Mike Williams
10 catches and he's going to get traded.
Mike Williams' limited production is not a result. My takeaway from that is not that he sucks. That's not my takeaway. My takeaway is he's He's not being used correctly. He is still clearly recovering from the torn ACL, and his quarterback doesn't like him. That's my not personally doesn't like him, but doesn't want.
Those are all pretty big negatives.
Well, how much of that is him and how much of that is his external? I would not be shocked. You put Mike Williams on the Ravens right now, that man's playing off. He's going off. He's going to play really well because Lamar's going to huck it to him and just he's going to chunk it to him in the end zone and boom, he's going to be making contested catches because in the limited opportunities we saw, Mike Williams is still great in contested catch situations. I mean, he was fantastic in the few opportunities that he got with the Jets this year. So with the Jets,
he sucks. And with another team, he wouldn't suck?
It's the way they're using him, yeah. With the way he's being used, yes. They're not using him correctly.
So wouldn't you, by that logic, advocate for, I guess, keeping him and just using him differently?
Well, not now. You just traded for Davante. If the Jets didn't trade for Davante Adams, yes, I'd be sitting here saying the Jets should be more vertical with Mike Williams. But now they just traded for Davante Adams. And all of a sudden, Mike Williams is your 4th wide receiver. It's hard to feed all those targets, and I'm not going to change certain aspects of the offense to feed your 4th wide receiver. I don't think, I get why they're also, I get it from his perspective. Why the hell would he want to be here if he's your 4th wide receiver and he's not being used correctly?
So before we move on to one of our last topics, because we got one more possible trade story to talk about because the Jets never give us a moment's rest. Justin,
yes,
do you have a message from our friends over at Underdog?
Yes, because I know we missed a few weeks, but we are continuing our partnership with Underdog Fantasy this football season. Over 1 million across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. You could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player stats, i.e. touchdowns, passing yards, and more. I did make my picks for this week. I wanted a Davante Adams, higher or lower or pick him. But unfortunately, he was not listed yet. I think I made my picks too early. But the three-leg or thing pick'em that I'm choosing this week, I have Breece Hall higher than 25.5 receiving yards. They finally got him involved last week. I expect that to hopefully continue, both on the ground and in the air. I have an Allen Lazard touchdown bet or pick him because he leads the league in touchdowns right now. Feels like a safe pick. And then Chris Boswell higher than 1.5 field goals made. That's my 3 picks or whatever they call them on the app. I think it's 3 picks. The Jets end up giving up a lot of field goals because their defense generally holds in the red zone. At least under Robert Saleh, they did that a lot, and they did that this past week. Unfortunately, fortunately for the Jets, Tyler Bass just missed a couple of kicks. But those are my picks this week. I'm hoping that I win because I haven't won yet. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code PRESS. That's PRESS, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code PRESS to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 and older, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, you can call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. All right, Mike, let's talk Haason Reddick.
Let's talk Haason Reddick.
As I'm going to get
Haason Reddick is still a member of the New York Jets. I don't know if it'll be for much longer, but that's where we are right now with old Mr. Reddick here. I'm still confused as to if I should feel any more optimistic or not about the latest updates, because Haason Reddick's agent fired him, which is kind of hilarious if you think about it, because agents don't fire people a lot. Agents, by law, have what's called a fiduciary responsibility. So by law, they have to act in their client's best financial interest, not their own financial interests. Meaning there's no possible way any agent would tell Haason Reddick, you should lose $10 million in fines and still not get what you want. So because of that, he's gone. Now, he did hire power broker Drew Rosenhaus, who they allegedly said is going to, quote, solve this. I am not sure that will happen, but who knows? Right now, I'm still less optimistic that there's going to be any sort of deal done, just because I think the well has just become so toxic. I think he doesn't want to be there. I think if he wanted to be there by now, he would have been there. I'm ready to give up on it. He would help more. He would certainly help more than I think Davante Adams would in terms of fixing what's wrong with the Jets, their pass rush, because now you would get Haason Reddick and Will McDonald together. That's a hell of a unit, in my opinion, like a top 2 guys. We've said before, McDonald can't be your best pass rusher. If he's your second best with Reddick, if he's the Reddick that we saw in Philadelphia, why can't he be? Now, I just don't think it's going to happen, though, just because I think the Jets played it wrong from the beginning, getting rid of John Franklin Myers and doing this whole thing before they had anything done with Reddick. And then beyond that, Reddick just did one of the most insanely stupid things I've ever seen an athlete do, money-wise, a football player. This is right up there with Latrell Sprewell turning down a bunch of money because he said, I got my family to feed. He turned down a 3-year, $36 million contract. And he said, my kids are going to be on those Sally Struthers commercials, which are like for the kids in Africa, who need, food aid. That's what Latrell Sprewell said. This is bordering on that level. So honestly, I think he might get traded. Now, the problem, though, is he can't get traded to the NFC. Because one of the conditions on the pick from the Eagles is that 3rd round pick would turn into a 2nd. Obviously, number 1, if he did any of those, performance.
Yeah, well, he's not going to hit those. He's not hitting those.
He's not going to get all that, playing this amount of snaps, getting this amount of sacks. So because of that, but if they trade to an NFC team, then the condition goes from a 3rd to a 2nd. So he's limited to AFC teams who need pass rushers and are willing to pay Haason Reddick a long-term deal. It's a small market, but I still think it's more likely than him playing with the Jets right now.
I think it's in theory possible they trade him to an NFC team, even if it's unlikely. They just, they'd have to get a haul back in return. It's not like they can't trade him to the NFC, but yeah, they would. I believe it was Josina Anderson that reported that the conditions of that 2026 pick would become a second round pick instead of a third if he was traded to the NFC, which is such a bizarre condition. But that seems to be the reality of it. I'd like to say I think for the first time in a long time, I'm cautiously optimistic about the Reddick situation at the moment. I don't know what the resolution is going to be, but I think there's going to be one. There's going to be some resolution, whether that means he's traded and the Jets recoup an asset for him, or he actually returns and plays, because I do think that is a possibility. The Jets are leaving that option on the table, and based on, at least what Drew Rosenhaus is saying and the way he's talking, it sounds like he's wanting to make it believe that Reddick is very open to playing for the Jets again, which maybe Drew Rosenhaus just got to him, and maybe he talked some sense into him. Maybe getting dropped by his agency was the wake-up call that Reddick needed to kind of realize, oh shit, I'm kind of tanking my own career. I'm taking my value over what? Over principle? Over what? So maybe he finally realized that. He absolutely would make the Jets a lot better. Their defensive line is very bad. Quinnen Williams has had an underwhelming season. Will McDonald, while the sack numbers are high, is not good enough to be your team's best pass rusher, and they have nothing outside of that. Michael Clemens is still playing 60, 70% of snaps, and he's really bad at football. And the depth that we thought that they might have had in the summer, whether it was guys like Tack McKinley or Braden McGregor, Eric Watts, whoever, they're not there. They're not showing up. They're not playing at an NFL level right now, or at least a level where you'd like them to be playing an important part in your rotation. So, yeah, Haason Reddick coming back would be huge for the Jets. It would actually give them another pass rusher that they can lean on outside of Will McDonald, hopefully freeing up more because McDonald's getting chipped a good amount. Like in those third down situations, they are keeping an extra blocker there to chip Will McDonald because they know he's the only possible pass rush threat that the Jets have on the edge. So I would love if Haason Reddick were to come back and play for the Jets. I don't know what his value would even be in a trade at this point, and whatever team would trade for him would have to have some sort of knowledge of his contract situation when they're making that trade. They're not going to make the same mistake that the Jets made. It's a weird situation, but I do feel a little bit more optimistic now that he has an agency and there has been some movement in that market. And I do think the Jets giving him an option to kind of seek out a trade and see what his options are out there is a good thing. And it hopefully means that either we're going to get a trade soon or we're going to get some sort of resolution with the Jets if he realizes that the grass might not be greener.
I'm just wondering who is going to, because honestly, when I saw Reddick, this whole update with him, I looked at Detroit after Aiden Hutchinson. I'm like, oh, that'd be perfect for him.
Yeah. They did check in, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Today he reported that the Lions have checked in on Reddick.
But then they lose a second.
Right.
For a guy and they're not going to trade a second for Haason Reddick at this point of view.
You would think. Unless it's some sort of swap where it's like a second for a third.
This is just it's a hot mess, number one.
Yeah.
And it's a hot mess that only seems to happen with the Jets. And it demoralizes you because, again, this one is that they just got Davante Adams.
They did.
To play with Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson in a division that sucks. This should be a great day. And yet, I still think the bigger problem is they have no pass rush because of Haason Reddick, and it's still ruining things.
I feel like, a shame. From an overall perspective, I don't know if this is just me being delusional. I'm more optimistic about the Jets right now than I probably should be. I think because I truly believe they are better than a 2-4 football team. I think even the advanced metrics would indicate that as well, whether it's EPA or whatever. The Jets rank pretty highly in a lot of things. And I think that they are at worst a 3-3 team, probably should be 4-2. The pessimistic part of me is just like, well, maybe it's just not bad luck. And maybe the Jets are cursed, or maybe there's some underlying whatever that they just can't get out of their own way. But I truly think that the Jets, they're in an okay spot right now. They're in an okay spot. And I think that they can make a run. Now, if they go out and lose to Pittsburgh on Sunday and they're 2-5 and they lose in similar whatever fashion, I don't think they're going to get blown out or anything, but if they go lose to Pittsburgh on Sunday and maybe it's by another 3 points or by another 6 points, whatever it is, another 1-score game, then I'll feel a lot less optimistic, because even though I do think the Jets are good, they still can't prove that or I don't think they're a good football team. I think they're a bad football team that has a lot of talent. They need to prove that they can win those games. They need to prove that they can win those one-score games, and they have not been able to do that to this point. Reddick would help them do that, to tie this back into Haason Reddick. Haason Reddick would really, really help them do that. You have another closer. You have another, or really a pass rusher who you can hope that if it's 3rd and 10 and the game's on the line, you can get home, because the Jets had that last year. They've had that for the last few years. Bryce Huff was that guy. Bryce Huff won them that game against the Bills last year. Remember when he injured Josh Allen's elbow? That was Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff clean beat his dude right off the snap and won them that game. The Jets do not have a guy that can do that. Will McDonald is the closest thing to do it, and you could say he kind of won them that Titans game with that pass rush rep, which was honestly probably the best pass rush rep of any Jets edge rusher this year. The Jets don't have someone that can consistently do that. Haason Reddick, if he's the Haason Reddick he's been throughout his career, is someone who can consistently do that. So I am hopeful and optimistic that they reach some sort of resolution. And based on the updates that we've seen in the last few days, it seems more likely that it's been in a long time.
Now I want to ask really quick. Do you think, because I'm looking again at the Reddick thing, and John Middlecoff, who's one of Cowherd's guys, he actually I think had a good point about this Jets team, because this feels like an NBA team where it's like headlines and stars and trading for guys, and then they're an average 38 and 44 kind of team. I think we alluded to this earlier about the similarities between them and the Nets.
Yeah.
Doesn't it kind of feel like that? It's stars and drama and trades, and we'll trade for this guy, and then that guy goes out to recoup a pick. And
so is if Aaron Rodgers is Kevin Durant, which one is Kyrie and which one's Harden? Is Adams? I feel bad putting Adams as either Harden or Irving. Like, I feel like Haason Reddick can be Kyrie Irving. I'd be cool with that comparison, or honestly even James Harden. Both of those make sense, but I feel bad putting Davante Adams as any of those guys.
It's it's tough. And oddly enough, Jets still have a game to play this week. They play the freaking Steelers in prime time again.
I hate
crying
it.
out loud.
I'm hating all the prime time at this point because it's just, I hate it.
You know what's going to happen.
What?
What's going to happen.
What's going to happen? There's a lot of
things. The odd thing about this game, this blew my mind, was for some reason the Steelers are considering starting Russell Wilson over Justin Fields.
It sounds like they're going to. It almost sounds like they're definitely going to at this point.
On top of the fit, like, I'm not going to relitigate the career of Russell Wilson. I think he's a fantastic quarterback overall. His career Super Bowl winner, should have had 2. I don't want to tell you what happened in the other one. I think you guys know. The problem that I have with this right now is, even though Justin Fields, I think, might be worse as a passer still than Russell Wilson, I think right now he's a much better playmaker and runner. And that's the problem with the Jets. They can't stop the run. So Najee Harris and Justin Fields together in the same backfield, that's a team that I think could just run roughshod over the Jets. And instead they go back to Russell Wilson. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Now, I get that Wilson may have slightly more passing upside, and Fields, while better, he certainly hasn't been Terry Bradshaw throwing the ball. But, I mean, they're 4-2, and the locker room seems to love Fields. And I like Mike Tomlin as a coach. I really don't get this. I truly don't.
I agree. I'm very surprised by this as well, because I don't want to call myself like a Justin Fields hater, but I feel like I've been a Justin Fields doubter over the last few years. I've seen enough for the most part where I'm just like, man, the same issues he had coming out of college, it just has not fixed. And while he's so fun and I root for the guy and I want him to succeed, I've been down on him for a while. This is the best stretch of football, I think, that I've seen him play maybe ever. I don't think he's lighting it up by any means, but he's corrected a lot of the mistakes that he had been making in the past. He's taking a lot fewer sacks, which that's been a huge issue for him throughout his career. He's taken a lot fewer sacks. He's been better. I think he's been better, which is what makes the switch very surprising. Maybe it's a thing where it's almost like, well, we signed Russ to be the starter. He's the veteran. We got to give him a shot. It'd be unfortunate to let an injury prevent him from starting, but I don't know.
You guys get Wally pipped, man. You got to go with the flow.
Right now, I think Justin Fields would give the Steelers a better chance to win this game versus the Jets, mostly because of that rushing upside, because the Jets are a very, very aggressive defense. They miss a lot of tackles. Their defensive line is very aggressive, and they're susceptible to running quarterbacks, as we've seen over the years with Josh Allen or whoever they're playing, whether it's Lamar Jackson or whoever. They're susceptible to that. And I think Justin Fields has the ability to take advantage of this Jets defense. Now, they've thrown out the idea. They've flirted with the idea of using both quarterbacks in this game, which the old adage goes, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. I definitely they've thrown out the idea, or I believe it's been thrown out there, that both quarterbacks could play at points in this game. Now that, if they do that, I imagine it would be a situation where Russell Wilson starts and then they have a few package plays for Justin Fields, which it's unfortunate that he's just being diminished to a package play quarterback after he's playing some pretty solid football over the first 4 weeks, not lighting it up, but playing fine, playing well. That would be interesting. Maybe they use that to try and take advantage of this Jets defense. I don't know. Or maybe they're seeing the Jets and they're saying, well, look, their secondary is beat up. Maybe we want a quarterback who we trust to throw the ball more. And maybe that's Russell Wilson at this stage. I don't know what their decision-making is. I don't know what the thought process is. But as a Jets fan, as somebody rooting for the Jets, and I can tell you probably from the Jets' perspective, they are happy that Russell Wilson is starting a quarterback, because I'd much rather face him right now, especially since he has not played this year. He's still coming off that calf injury. I'd much rather play Russell Wilson than Justin Fields in this game.
What I'm really spooked about, though, if I'm being honest, is the offensive line's better than it was last year.
Also, hold on. Najee Harris did not practice today with a rib injury.
Oh, wow, that's going to matter. Not at all. So the problem that I have right now with the Jets is the offensive line is better than it was last year. But I still think they're really starting to show their age, I think, is the problem with them right now. And you know what's certainly not going to help?
TJ Watt.
Freaking TJ Watt. That's what's not going to help. I'm afraid of him going up against Tyron Smith. I'm afraid of him going up against a guy like even Olu Fashanu if he has to play. Morgan Moses, who's clearly hurt. I know he's a tough guy.
He was limping.
Clearly hurt.
Yeah.
That frightens me. Minkah Fitzpatrick frightens me. Mike Tomlin has this ability to just squeeze wins out of teams that don't have any business winning certain games. All of that frightens me. And if they had won a couple of these other things and they're 4-2, I'm like, why not? I'm feeling good about their momentum. The way they've been closing games lately, this is going to be a close game. I don't feel them really. I don't feel them pulling it out. Even with Davante Adams, somehow the Jets are favorites in this game. I don't know how. They're like 1.5 point favorites. I think Vegas is trying to honestly trick people. I think they're trying to steal your money because I think they're really invested in Adams. And I think they think he's going to make that much of a difference. I don't think he will, just right off the bat. So because of that, I'm predicting a pretty comfortable. I'm predicting a pretty close, is what I meant to say. Steelers win, and it's going to be something like 20-17.
Sure.
Old school slobber knocker. Rodgers ain't throwing for 300 yards.
Mike dropped out. I thought that was me that dropped out. Well, I thought I dropped out. That's crazy.
Yeah. So because of that, I still think the Jets are going to end up going to 2-5, which is depressing as shit because they were 4-3 last year. I don't want to have to deal with, all these Zach Wilson people, but they're going to be out in full force.
The vibes will be, I don't want to say an all-time low, but they'll be very low if the Jets lose another close game this week and that they're 2-5 with Davante Adams. The vibes will be very low. And because of that, I don't know if this is a surprise. I don't know if I'm just feeling good today because I'm going to a concert later and I'm excited about that.
Ooh.
I think the Jets are winning this game. I'm going to predict the Jets victory. So we're going to be going in opposite directions here. I am going to think with my logical brain, and I'm going to ignore the fact that the Jets are probably cursed and they just have external demons and gods at play here. And I'm just going to say they've been unlucky to be 2-4. They've had their wide receiver fall down twice. They've had a kicker. I don't think that part's necessarily luck. That kicker, he's just playing poorly at this moment, but they've had a kicker miss 3 potential game-winning field goals, sort of, if you want to include, 3 field goals that would have helped the Jets win games. I think the Jets win this one. I think they pull out a close one. I think they finally win this game. Now, my hesitations are similar to what you had. The Jets are not nearly as well coached as the Steelers. The Steelers are one of the best coached teams in the NFL. A lot of that is Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL. And as you said, they have a tendency to pull out games like this, to win games where, maybe they're not as talented, because I think objectively speaking, the Jets are a more talented team on paper than the Steelers. I don't think that should be argued. But one of those teams is 4-2 for a reason, and the other's 2-4 for a reason. But all that being said, give me a Jets win. I was going to say a similar score too. I'm going to say I think the Jets put up 27 points in this game. And you know what it is? I think they score 4 touchdowns and Greg Zuerlein misses an extra point. I think they put up 27 points, and I think the Steelers.
It's very specific. Did you have some sort of like premonition?
I don't know, but if that's right, that's going to be pretty crazy, huh? And I think it'll be 27-20 final score. Jets defense comes through and holds on in the end, and the Jets win 27-20. That's going to be my prediction. Greg Zuerlein misses a field goal, maybe misses an extra point, maybe misses a field goal as well. But I'm feeling unreasonably optimistic about this offense going into this week. Probably more optimistic than I should be, just because I was very impressed with what happened on Monday. Like I am a process over results guy, and I know they only scored 20 points. The process was really good. And I think they have a potential to continue a lot of those things and now add Davante Adams to the picture. So I'm feeling unnecessarily optimistic about this offense against a always stingy Steelers defense. But I think the offense has a really good game again. So I'll say 27-20, Jets win. I'm probably going to be wrong, but I'm feeling optimistic right now. So there it is.
And with that, we're going to call time on this latest episode of the Jet Press podcast. Thanks for staying with us. I know we had some technical difficulties, and I had some neighbors that wouldn't turn their music off. Guys, it's 4:00 on a Wednesday. Why? Never mind. So I had to move up shop. Thanks for sticking with us through that. Thanks, of course, for tuning in whenever we go live, which is normally Wednesday at 3 p.m. And after every Jets game, heaven for a fan, we'll be there. They're probably going to be 2-5, but we'll be there. You can like the stream. That really helps. Subscribing. We're close to 1,000, so we really want to get to 1,000.
We get to
that would be big for us, like a big milestone.
If we get to it,
we'd be so thrilled. Justin, you have any final thoughts before our internets both collectively kick us out here?
If we get to 1,000 subscribers, that means our internet is fixed overnight. And there's no way you don't know if that's true unless we get there. So help us get to 1,000 subscribers.
I'm putting it on you, the viewers.
Yeah, it's your guys' fault. No, but we always appreciate everybody who tunes in, who listens, who comments, or whatever. Always very much appreciated. And we'll be back on Sunday night talking about hopefully the first Jets win in too long at this point.
Since you said same old Jets was dead.
Since I did say that, didn't I?
Because they beat Jacoby Brissett.
Right. Well, maybe I should just be pessimistic then. You're right. I don't know how to break that curse. It's just, it's my fault. Blame me.
Yeah, I'll get criticized for being too negative. I'm like, why? I'm right. Why are you booing me? I'm right.
Honestly, I do think, even though I predicted that the Jets are going to win this week, part of me deep down knows that that's probably not true. But I'm feeling optimistic, so give me a Jets win over the Steelers. And until we're talking about that game, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow Jet Press on the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and live immediately following every single Jets game. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Freed. As Garrett says, Justin for president. Thank you.
What about me?
Nope, he said Justin. I've been Justin Freed.
Hold up. Garrett, listen here.
That's been Mike Luciano.
You and me got something to say.
I like
this is Michael Clemens, Deion Dawkins at this point.
I appreciate you, Garrett. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time. Even you, Garrett. Even you.